I'm excited to share with you what I've learned about winter sowing. And I want to introduce myself. Sue Puleo, and my husband, Bob Butcher, and I own Faire Meddow. This is our 10 acres. We're in northern Fauquier County in Delaplane, and we're both members of Virginia Native Plant Piedmont. Together, Bob and I own the 10 acres there. We thought it was important to find a name because my license plate says I help. It really should say I share. And I wanted to be able to direct people our way. And let me see if I can figure out the clicker. Before I click out of this, I don't know if you can see this blue little blob back behind our, or I'm sorry, yellow little blob behind our house. That is the very first meadow I created from scratch. All the rest of this green is native meadow, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. This blue is a 40 by 60 tarp that I used to create another meadow, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end if we have more time. And let me see, click to the right. Nothing happens. Click the top button, click that. What do I click?
Just working. All right, we will figure this out.
It was working.
It was working. If not, I can just. But,
okay, but then you're there.
There we go.
All right, which button?
These two.
Okay, I tried that. All right. Oh, but it's a split screen. Is that
have to select.
How it's supposed to be?
This is how it's structured right here.
That's your first one. It's fine.
That's actually not.
Where
That's
we are.
okay. I'm sorry. I do have a Facebook page for Faire Meddow. If you're interested, that's at the top of the handout. And we also made Faire Meddow a place on Google Maps. And my sweet husband said, "You're going to have people driving up the driveway." I'm like, yeah. And we're fairly close to Sky Meadow State Park. And we did have a really fun visitor. A couple of guys jumped out of their little red VW with lenses on their camera about this long. And they're like, "We just wanted to bird watch. Can we bird watch here?" And I'm sure we would probably appreciate it if you call or reach out on Facebook, and so we can be there and show you around. But I do want to share, and we do want to share what we're learning. So talked about that. So appointments are best. So my next slide demonstrates that we're really into this native habitat thing. These are just a few of the organizations that we've supported or gotten recognition from. First thing we did was become a wildlife sanctuary from the Audubon Society, and that involves a site visit. And they just look around and see if you've got adequate things for birds. They didn't measure my number of caterpillars, but they're out there. We're a pollinator habitat with the Xerces Society, the National Wildlife Foundation, Wildlife Habitat, Monarch Way Station, and we're on the map with Doug Tallama's Homegrown National Park and Firefly Habitat. I encourage you to, probably most of your properties qualify in one way or the other for all these. I'm just, grew up in a family of scouting, so I got to get my merit badges. Let's see. So Bob and I started out by rescuing trees in our property. And if you saw from the first map, we're surrounded by woods. We had hundreds of ailanthus, giant ailanthus, hundreds of baby ailanthus. We had bittersweet vines. This big is not an exaggeration, chainsaw worthy. And Blue Ridge Prism, they have a booth out here, hugely valuable to us. They teach you the proper timing, the proper tool, the proper technique. So it involves the least amount of effort, even though it's a lot of work. And if you do it right, one and done. The first time we went out after our vines, first we just cut down ailanthus. Then they made hundreds of baby ailanthus. So then we learned you don't have to cut them down. We just do the hack and squirt. So anyway, use that as a resource. The Clifton Institute has been a big resource to us. They came out and did surveys and went over things that we should and shouldn't do on our property. Virginia Working Landscapes, I'll talk about them a little bit more. That's a Smithsonian Institute, they took over the property in Front Royal, and they're doing some amazing things for grassland birds. Virginia Forestry was a big help. We plant trees. I'm not entirely sure they're still around. They used to be based in the plains, and we lucked out because we asked for trees and they brought us trees. Now, when they say trees, they're like this tall, bare root, but they, we got red buds, serviceberry, silky dogwood, river birch, willow oak. They gave us some hollies, just American hornbeam, lots of trees from then. And of course, the Virginia Native Plant Society is big on our list. Let me see where I am now.
Source of the source kind of slide. We get it from everywhere.
So over the years, Bob and I have planted 250 native trees and shrubs, and we kind of stopped counting. And I said they were just little twigs. We used to mow those fields, and I should have left the picture up of our aerial of our property, but we used to mow the fields like 3 times a year because that's what I thought responsible landowners did, and make it pretty like you pretending it. And the Clifton Institute came out and said, oh my gosh, stop doing that. Just only mow mid-February to early March, 1 time a year. We can manage the woodies that come up in the fields. And we have been so amazed at the naturally occurring variety of natives. We've got hundreds of butterfly weed. We've got a Joe Pye forest. We've got cardinal flower, every kind of goldenrod.
5 different Asclepias.
Okay. 5 different goldenrods, asters, New York ironweed, cardinal flower. It was all there all along. So next slide. We were chosen in 2023 by Virginia Working Landscapes to have a biodiversity study done. I brought 3 copies of that if you're just interested in leafing through what you get with a biodiversity study. But what they found was 42 different kinds of birds. That was first or second week in June, and 90 different plant species, and the majority of them were native plants. We have our fair share of honeysuckle and I don't know, other stuff, but we've made a pretty good dent in the invasives. I am a lifelong learner. From all those people I showed you before, I've learned. I don't have a degree in anything. I'm not a master naturalist or master gardener. I'm just a learn while doing kind of person. I, in fact, manage 2 full-time real estate offices, so I have like a real job, and I so value any time I get out of doors. So just want to give a grain of thought. I may mislabel something or not have the scientific name, but I'm having fun learning while doing. I am, good timing for me, right? A Dr. Doug Tolomei disciple. We first saw Dr. Tolomei talk 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and it just was like somebody rang a bell in my head. I always knew, I've always been a tree hugger, earth lover person, but I never really got the importance of caterpillars. I have a farming background, grew, orchards and organic produce and all that stuff, and caterpillars were always the enemy. Now we see a caterpillar eating something and we're like, woohoo! So very different mindset. So let's see, and Dr. Tolomei told us we've lost 30% of our North American birds since 1970. I feel like that's on my watch. I mean, that like happened during my life. It wasn't something someone else did to us. We did it to us. And then he talked about the 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars. We know we have a lot of work to do to change the mindset in our yard. For Bob and I, that means less lawn, more native habitat. I'm trying to figure out which slide I'm on. Okay. Protecting our oaks. I will go to great lengths to leave a little baby oak wherever that blue jay put it, even though we do try to keep our fields. I did bring some copies of the native keystone species, which Dr. Tolomei talked about, but I wish I had had that from the beginning because it tells you which things to plant that are not only pretty, but that will bring the most benefit in the terms of caterpillars and to specialist pollinators. Now, you heard all that this morning. Now I want to share with you what I'm learning about winter sowing. And I want to start with our why. These are pictures taken from Faire Meddow. And maybe you guys can identify. I'm a huge fan of swamp milkweed. It's really easy to grow, and the monarchs absolutely love it. That's blue mist on that side. And then what that brings us is the birds. We've got indigo, we've got goldfinch, and the bluebirds, of course, and chickadees. We actually have some winged sumac, so they really like that. So for us, again, it's all about the birds. So I started out with these mini, what I call greenhouses. You guys have all maybe seen the winter sowing with clear plastic milk jugs. That works too. We don't buy milk in plastic milk jugs, and I just don't have that much stuff sitting around. And I guess I'm pretty serious about it. I wanted to do it in a serious way. So these are what we use. I think they're about 20 by 30 by 10. And Bob gets a really sharp drill bit. We do this indoors where they're warm. And like every 2 or 3 inches or so, drill holes in all the tops and holes in the bottom. Hugely important. And that creates, for 10 or 15 bucks, depending on where you buy it, a mini greenhouse.
Can I add in, just point out,
Please.
I didn't realize this side. Obviously, she's talking about winter sowing, but I want you to look at our native meadows. This is
What they look like right now.
this is how I say it. It's full of native shit, man. It is so cool. It all just came up because we left it alone. So you've got dogbane, and you've got native grasses, and you've got all kinds of
Joe Pye.
Joe Pye, one of the
Indian
people
grass.
from Virginia Working Landscapes, came out and said, "Oh my God, I'm in a Joe Pye forest."
It's like this tall.
We didn't do any of that. Nature did it, and it's amazing.
And it's a good source of seeds for what I do. I don't have my slide numbers here. So the mini greenhouses, you could do any size. I like the clip-on lids because I'm just curious by nature, and I like to see what's going on in there. And they're easy to move around if you want to move them around. We use them year after year. I use little small pots, which I didn't bring any in, but I don't just put the dirt in here. I use all those little pots. Anyway. No, I use plastic pots, but this is what it looks like in the snow. So the whole idea is to let it get rain and snow and whatever's going to happen. You're just giving it a little bit of protection. You're really trying to mimic what happens in nature anyway, but giving it a little space. So even though we want the birds to eat our seeds, we don't want them to eat these seeds. And there's plenty of other stuff out there. So they sit outside all winter, rain and snow. I've been thrilled with the results, and this should show you some of the results. This is a bed we made alongside our driveway and just popped the first year's results in. That was a boom year for swamp milkweed. This is the second year project, and I'll talk more about that. That's all blue mist in the back. At one point, I think it was I thought it was asters, but it's not. Back every year? Isn't that a good question?
The question was, does the swamp milkweed come back every
yeah,
year?
I heard, the swamp may come back. It should, but in this case, it didn't. What happened was the field across the driveway had a lot of common milkweed. There's one there, and you can't see it this first year, but the common milkweed kind of came in and took over. So I'm saying, no, you guys go back over there. And I'll replant, but some of that did not come back, and I haven't quite figured out why. Maybe because it's not in a swamp. Between my common milkweed and everything else, and that was my thus far no further line for the common milkweed.
Yeah.
And it's an active business to keep it. over there.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
when we started pulling up the common milkweed, you know why? It's got these runners that, and you need a shovel. Anyway, so great question. I'm still learning. Thank you, Dr. Previous slide. You have them on like railroad ties? I do, and I'll get that. I have them on boards, bricks and boards, so they have air underneath, and we'll get to that. But we've had great success with blue vervain, beard tongue, liatris, sneezeweed, anise hyssop, partridge pea, New York ironweed, evening primrose, cardinal flower, even great blue lobelia. That's vervain there. But yeah, lots, kind of anything I've tried has come up, whether it was happy where I put it or not. We're still working on that. And there's my sneezeweed is one of my favorites. That's New England aster up there. The advantages of winter sowing is that basically it's so simple because you're just trying to mimic nature. If you think about what would happen with a black-eyed Susan out in the field, you know, it'd swing around a bit and eventually the plant would get tired and lay down, or the bird would pull some seeds out and they would sit there and get wet and get snow and get whatever. And then when they are ready, if they actually hit dirt, they would just grow. Planting by seed really helps promote biodiversity. If you buy plants from plant suppliers, a lot of them clone their plants, so they're not as diverse as they would be from seed. You do not have to worry about them getting leggy because they're much hardier outside. You do not need to harden the seeds off. Do you think the seeds growing under that snow are going to need to be hardened off, right? They're already going to be acclimated. There's no worry about damping off. Now, I do open the tops off if it's been really wet, to just give them a little air. You don't have to, but I'm just that kind of person. They have sometimes grown a little bit of moss or algae on the tops of the plants. I don't worry too much about it. It doesn't seem to affect anything. The native seeds will germinate when the conditions are right for each species. And winter sowing, this time of year, we're all a little bit depressed, you know. Gives you something to do in the winter. And it has a huge success rate. So what makes it super easy is knowing that not all native seeds require that cold stratification, but pretty much all native seeds suited to our region are okay with it. So you don't really need to get all exercised about this one needs 30 days, that one needs 60 days. It's just about mimicking nature with a bit of protection. And I killed the slide.
While you have a pause, when are you putting your pots in these tubs?
That's it. I'm getting to that. And anytime from end of November through February pretty much works. Let's see, where am I? Here's a few, I did that one already. Here's a few sources of seeds. The Wild Seed Project, and when they send you seeds, they're not local to Virginia, but they're Pennsylvania or I think Maine. They tell you where they're sourced from. They'll send you a little booklet on winter sowing. Homegrown National Park has a directory of seed sellers, the Xerces Society, the Department of Wildlife Recreation also has that. Make sure your seeds were not grown with nicotinoids or something, because you don't want to be growing a plant that's doing the opposite of what we want it to do. So how do we store the seeds? Trying to figure out where I am on my slide. I should have numbered the slides so I could tell.
Yes.
So I don't know about you, but we get a lot of junk mail. This is just a couple months worth of when you open it up, there's an envelope inside that they want you to send them money. And I have, please take some of these. Pay no attention to where they're from. Some of them are from places we know and love, and some of them not so much. But if you want some seed storage envelopes for free, that's what I use. and I write big, so that's how I label my plants. You might think you don't need to label them because you might think you're going to remember, but you won't. And they all start to look the same. I should probably do a much better job labeling, but that's kind of my seeds. Now, at this point, I've collected the seeds and removed what I think is the chaff, but I usually save more than less. So I don't care if there's a little trash or chaff or, it's not just all pure seeds. It doesn't take up that much room. Right. So, and then for your information, I put these all in a large freezer plastic Ziploc bag in my refrigerator down in the bottom bin, and it only takes up like 1.5 gallon Ziploc bag.
So that's from fall until you're ready.
When I collect them, yeah, which is usually in the fall. Yeah. And you could take a whole class on which seeds to collect and when to collect them. Basically, when they're brown and when they've stopped growing, but before the seed pod opens. So this is how I label the plants. I actually cut a yogurt container and, clean yogurt container. And I think this year I've used Sharpies in the past. Don't use Sharpies. It will not last. It disappears, and then you're really at the mercy of, let's wait and see what comes up. This marker is a pretty good marker that I just got off of Amazon, Stadler Lumocolor Permanent Garden Marker. I create the labels before I go plant them. And then before I head outside to plant, I actually tape the label onto the envelope. So when I'm dragging all this stuff outside, the label's right where I need it. You will need more than one label. So when you go outside, be prepared to make more labels as you go.
Were those yogurt or cottage cheese?
I think that was off of the Organifi.
Okay.
It's any kind of relatively sturdy plastic. And you can buy them on Amazon, whatever, but use what you have. You have a question?
I have a tip, and it works great. When you go to the landfill or the dump and someone's thrown away those faux wood blinds,
Oh, those are perfect.
you
Yeah.
cut a piece that long, put a point one in,
Uh-huh.
that marker keeps on there, and you can make it any length you want. You just have to point one in so you can hammer it down.
Yeah.
And it's it's plastic, but it
There you
looks
go.
pretty, and it'll last really long.
Yeah, if I were labeling when I put them in the ground, I'd use a bigger label. This is just for my little 4-inch pots, but good tip there. When's the right time to sow? Late fall through February typically works. If you've already provided the seeds with some moist stratification in the refrigerator, and I guess you'd actually have to wet them down a little bit, put a wet paper towel or something. You could do it as late as March, so it's not too late. That's in your handout. I typically plant in December, and we find that the week after Christmas, kind of when the dust all settles and like, okay, now what do we do? Is a good time. That's sort of a personal deadline that I try to meet. This year it was a little bit later because it was so cold. When is the right time? All right, so here's an example of people using plastic milk jugs. You take the lid, the screw-on lid off, you cut them in half, but leave them so the top hinges. You don't want to cut them completely in half. Then the most important thing, if you learn nothing else today, is you need to have, and it took me a year to learn this, you need to have like 4 inches of dirt. I don't think this container right here, it looks like the roast chicken from Costco came in, used to come in. I don't think that has enough dirt because these plants are going to live in there until probably May. So my goal is to not have to transplant them. So you must have at least 3 to 4 inches of potting soil. And then we created these mini greenhouses. Again, they're about 20 by 30 by 10. I guess you could use any size, but I can tell you by May, some of the plants are up to the top. And by May, we're probably taking the top off anyway. But that size container works well for me.
You need 3 inches of soil at the bottom, even with the pots?
In the pots.
Yeah.
In the individual pots. No dirt goes in
soil
here.
within the pots.
I'm sorry. Right. Let me show you. So Do you guys have a potting shed full of pots?
Yeah.
We do. And the funnest thing is when you pull one out that says $7.99 on it, you know, because whatever you bought, and you're now planting something equally as nice, not for $7.99. I don't get all exercised about cleaning the pots. You know, I knock them to get the dirt out, but I don't sterilize them or anything like that. I have learned that seed flats, which I think those two on the back are seed flats, and they only had 2 inches of dirt, was a mistake. I have now given those away to somebody who's going to plant something and then transplant it.
Along this line, you said you don't like to transplant, but actually what we do is we grow them in these and we put them in the ground.
They
somewhere.
go where
So
they're
they are
gonna
pretty-
live.
Yeah. but
Well,
not pot to pot to pot.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just go from the little pots in here to where they're gonna live. Good point. I think I was gonna get to that at some point, but anyway, so do you like doing jigsaw puzzles? So I get them all out and try to figure out what's going to fit in where. This, I just happened to luck out. I think these are all little 4-inch pots and it fit perfectly 24 of them, right? But I'm not opposed to cutting a seed pack because it will be nested inside of here. So it doesn't really need to be all that structural. So sometimes I cut them just to, I want to use every inch of my pot. So that's my jigsaw puzzles. When I'm ready to start, I set up a little staging area. This year it was so cold, my sweet husband moved the truck out of the garage and set me up a space with a heater in the garage because it just was so cold out there and windy, and you can't mess with little seeds in the wind. You have a question in the back?
How much moisture is those normally hold? How often you gotta water?
Much
Getting there.
moisture.
Let
The
me
total-
show you where I
I
start.
forget
But
the
anyway,
water.
I've got a whole staging area. And then I take, some people say you have to use organic potting soil or this and that. You saw it, I'm using Miracle Grow. Don't use the moisture control ones, the ones in the blue bag, because I think that messes up their ability to drain well. That I just use Miracle Grow, dump it in a wheelbarrow. That's a whole 40-pound bag. And then I'm taking 2 or 3 2-gallon buckets. Warm water is nice if you're doing it in the winter. And either mix with my hand or I got a little tiny shovel and I make it like muddy. And that water is going to drain out. You might lose some of the Miracle Grow fertilizer that's in there, but these plants don't really need that anyway. It's much easier to mess up the other way. If you think you're just going to water potting soil from the top, it just doesn't ever get wet. And you want these to start out plenty wet, and then hopefully nature will take its course. They're not sprouting at this point. You're just trying to wake up the seeds to do their stratification thing. So not sure I've answered your question yet, but when I pack that, these are the seed flats that I told you I got rid of, but I use my fingers and push it down in there, and I really firmly put the potting soil in the pot. And then I try to leave like a 1/4-inch space. These were the 2-inch seed flats, which I should take some new slides because I would not recommend using those. It's not enough dirt. So this is what it looked like when I planted. I don't know, I could try to read some of those things up there. Blue lobelia, red bee balm, false blue indigo, cardinal flower. That's the same bunch. Once you surface sow them, then it's recommended that you get coarse builder sand and just cover enough to get contact with the ground. Maybe cover enough not to see the seed anymore. Cardinal flower seeds are so tiny, they're smaller than the grains of sand, so it doesn't take much. All you're trying to do with that is to get good ground contact and maybe help prevent them from splashing out as the rain comes in. Yes?
Is there a certain amount of seed you're putting in each one, or we do too much?
When you plant, how many seeds do you put in each one?
I don't think it's possible to do too much because if it would have been, I would have done that. My goal is to use the seeds that I collected, basically. And so I put them in there pretty dense. Here's some other examples, anise hyssops on the side. And, I'm not getting too crazy about separating them. That's wine cup, that's green milkweed, which I hadn't had a whole lot of luck with, but we do have some green milkweed, sneezeweed, and St. John's wort. And I just kind of dumped it in there. And the plants go through a natural selection process. Native plants like being close to one another because that's how they grow. So I've not thinned anything. You could probably get more results if you tried to thin them, but I'd rather not disturb the roots. And if I had, right now I'm doing like 15 of these. If I had 20, I'd probably spread them out a little more. So it depends on what you have. Here's another example. That's butterfly weed and, my goodness, bone set. That whole thing is bone set. And I think this is the last one. Queen of the Prairie turned out to be anise hyssop. Somebody mailed me and said, "Oh, you'll love this," and it turned out to be anise hyssop, which is a good thing. Pink echinacea, rattlesnake master, which I had good luck with. Woodland sunflower, rattlesnake master, tick seed. Just some examples.
Can I just do an ad for anise hyssop?
Oh my gosh,
It is
yes.
very deer resistant. It's one of the things that doesn't get grazed right down to the bone, and our deer eat everything they're not supposed to.
Oh,
Everything.
my yucca is like this anyway. Not the fan of Bambi anymore. You did ask about the boards and the bricks, and I do set them up on boards and bricks just to create a little airspace underneath. Well, I've tried different places. This is a southern exposure, and I'm expecting a little shade from the picket fence, and it's also right next to a big maple tree. You can see all those leaves. So when the maple leaps out and it starts getting warm, they'll have some protection from that. So once they start sprouting, that's a little bit more critical time. You don't want them to dry out, but you also don't want to overwater. So just leaving the thing contained, if it started out being wet, it should be okay. You're going to look to see condensation on the top of this. And if you get to where you're not seeing condensation for a day or more, you might want to sprinkle a little bit more water in there. That'll tell you. So this is alongside, inside our yard, along the southwest facing picket fence with some shade. I talked about the added benefit of doing this. And then when you put the mini greenhouse, that was all lined up, it will actually help kill the grass underneath. And so then I'll have a new garden. If I had my thinking cap on before I did all that, I would have weed eated it down to nothing, thrown some cardboard down, and then done that. And then I would have had a whole new bed. And the voles love that. So they'll come and aerate all underneath, and you'll be ready to plant when you take your stuff off. So that actually works really well. When will you see results? And I'm not watching time at all. So this is what they look like. That was planted December 28th on the southwest facing side, up on boards. And all the little pots are inside. And then they sit through the whole winter. And this is a picture, April 23rd.
Question about exposure. We are concerned about them roasting or cooking in these little boxes. So they're never really in full sun.
Right. This is the first year. And the north side of our house, it's a gable roof. There's no overhangs on the north side of our house. So I put them up against the foundation on the north side of the house and had great luck. When they started having true leaves, I just walked them over to Bob's dahlia bed. Don't tell him. The dahlias weren't awake yet. I just put them there where they could get sun during the day and then put them back at night. It might sound like a lot of trouble, but they're really very easy to move. Yeah, he's into his dahlias. So that is April 3rd when you start seeing stuff. And I'm going to show you a video that walks through the timeline, a couple videos in the end that might be helpful. That was the year. Oh, that is the video. And where's the sound?
On even narrow leaf mountain men. Gee, they're just slow. This is all Leatris. Yeah. And this is Meddow mix from Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
These are all virgin power.
I collected the seed from the side of the road. Oops.
Earlier, they did not come up with that one.
It's a little tiny something.
Jane's Meddow mix. Jane's Meddow mix. Wow. This is all asters.
Which turned out to be blue mist flower.
Aromatic acid. And then what do we have here? Beard tongue, cardinal flower, and a different Leatris. Queen of the Meadow.
The queen of the meadow turned out to be Anatisip. Good question.
I showed all these in December. I believe I just popped the top off because it's so beautiful this week. Just wanted to share. That's my version of little mini greenhouses with all holes drilled in the tops and in the bottoms. There you go.
That's hoary mountain mint, if you're wondering.
Yeah, which really spreads. Anyway, so this is another little video from May 23rd. They probably should have been in the ground sooner. And all that meadow mix was way overseeded, but I should have just thrown it out in the meadow, I guess, but I was doing an experiment, you know. Those were in those 2-inch seed flats, and they actually survived and did well. I'll show you the results in the end, but here is May 23rd, the same group. Swamp milkweed, I think.
Beard tongue, cardinal flowers, Leatris. Leatris, which
The bugs are eating it because I have the tops off. That's blue vervain, which I didn't know at the time. That's all blue mist. Anybody need any blue mist seed? That's what the bugs did to my butterfly weed. I gave most of this stuff away. Seed box I just collected from my creek, which was kind of cool. I guess the cost of the plastic containers. And I am not a videographer, is that obvious?
An instant wildflower bed.
I mowed that down to 1 inch and put cardboard down first.
In the ground. And got 5 cubic yards of 50-50 screened topsoil compost mix delivered. I'm a little high on the end still. This will be ready for as we get the end zone. That piece there is going to be the end. You're good company with the rest of the field. Wow.
That's the rest of the field, May 23rd.
Wing sumac, common milkweed.
Think that's the end of that. So to start this bed, and the way I usually start beds is either drop my mower deck down to 1 inch or get the weed eater and scalp it, wherever you're trying to put it. And I saw a talk once where they said the best way to start in your yard is to connect the dots. And that stuck in my head because you've got a tree here and you've got a bush here, and just connect the dots and make a little kidney shaped thing or something. And if the goal is less lawn, anywhere you can make less lawn is good. We do have walk paths all through our fields and our yards, but our goal is less lawn. So then I contacted Remington Mulch, which is all around the place. And they actually backed the truck up and dumped it here and then moved over and dumped it there and moved over and dumped it there. So it was a lot of work, but it was just kind of raking it level. And then Bob put the ends on for us. And this is a couple days later, and I actually have it planted. And how do I start the video? Is it gonna start?
So, got them in the ground. We just need some rain.
It was so
The
dry.
back row sort of is.
This was 23, I think. Not Astor's Blue Mist.
All this middle, like 4 rows are from Jane. Thank you, Jane. Jane's Meddow mix. I see some vervain. I think there's bone set. Who knows what all is going to come up?
It was sneezeweed. There was a lot of stuff in there.
This is swamp milkweed, butterfly weed. I think this is swamp milkweed. And I've got some beer chums in front.
Little baby liatris all along the front edge, which looks like grass now. Are those blue azures? Does anybody know they're butterflies?
I think, let's see, we've got cardinal flower. That's a big mess. Didn't want to separate it. I was worried about it.
I did not separate them. They're just in a clump.
Mhm.
It's up there. Yeah, you're going the right way.
No, that's cardinal flower. Those are the little seed box. They're there.
I just was excited about the seed box because my friend said it'll never grow. I'm like, okay. That was supposed to be Queen of the Prairie, but it's Anise hyssop.
Bloodweed is the orange flower. Bloodweed is pink. And the monstrous is all the way down. I think that's going to be a pokeweed, but we left it anyway. Gosh, New York ironweed. I think it's going to work out pretty darn well. Thank you, Bob, for hooking me up at the ends.
We did end up putting deer fencing around this.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Virginia.
You have set one that's something.
Had an indigo bunting serenading us all day.
There was an indigo up in that tree all the whole time I was working. Anyway, I think that's it for that.
Do you have a septic? Yeah. Septic.
So, I got them in the ground.
Oh, what started over? Here we go. Here's a September picture. I'll get to you in a second of the same garden. And I think this is also a video. And I do apologize for my lack of videography. I'm just doing this for me. So that's what Jane's Meddow mix turned into.
Orange set. Swamp milkweed. All kinds of good stuff in the back are asters and
And we now know blue mist. I think. That's the queen of the prairie, which is blue. And it says up. The cardinal flowers did bloom that first year. And that's my little seed box that I was like, see, it grew. And I got seeds off. And that also bloomed the next year, I think it was.
Next year.
Yep. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. Boom. I think.
All the time or?
So that's a good question. So you guys had a
You
couple
have
of
to leave it
questions,
fenced
but
in all
you
the
know,
time.
act as if what you do makes a difference, because it does.